everybody, for having me. I'll start with this beautiful setting. Backdrop is planet Earth, and I think it's important because as a mission, we want to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries. And it just happens to be that we're starting with the steel industry. So don't read too much into the H2 green steel part. As you know, steel stands for 8% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. And you may wonder, okay, so where did this crazy idea come from to start a greenfield plant in Europe? Don't we have enough steel? But it came actually from our customers. The founders of H2 Green Steel, they also founded a company called Northvolt, building a gigafactory for batteries in the north of Sweden. And they have a large automotive company as a shareholder and in their board. And they have been going through a decarbonization journey, seeing that first, let's get rid of the combustion engine. Let's replace that with batteries. What are the other items that we can do to reduce the carbon footprint of the products that we make? And pretty soon, after doing a full analysis of the bill of materials, looking at the carbon dioxide emissions of every single type of material, they saw, well, here it is. There's a steel. It drives an enormous amount of carbon dioxide in the car, and there is actually a way to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions. It's not a technological impossibility. There are ways to reduce the carbon dioxide already today. So the technical maturity is there. So this is a customer-driven proposition. Our customers are across automotive, commercial vehicles, white goods, furniture, and industrial equipment. They are asking for products that have a significantly lower carbon dioxide footprint than what they have today. Steel that is made in traditional blast furnace production has approximately 2 tons of carbon dioxide emissions in its production, and we are targeting 95% less than that. What's in common with a lot of these customer groups is that there is also a true pull from the end consumer. So the drivers are consumer awareness. This has been the hottest year so far on this planet. I'm quite enjoying it. I came from Sweden this morning. It was 15 degrees, but it is, I guess, unusual to enjoy 33 degrees in the Düsseldorf area this late in the year. So it's starting to become a reality that we really need to do something about this climate crisis, and the consumers are pushing that along. Disclosure is also very important. You change what you can measure, and when people start getting asked questions, so what is the carbon dioxide footprint of your products? How much are you emitting in your production process? Then you start to see that there's something there that you can change. And of course, the regulatory pressure. Let's not kid ourselves. The EU ETS scheme is also a very important driver of this, which makes Europe far ahead than any other region in the world, and a large potential for Europe to take a leading position in this. And here is on the right-hand side just the prices of the ETS. I believe 2021 was the first year when steel companies, starting to see that the free allocations were running out, started charging their customers a carbon surcharge for their products. And this is going to continue. So there is a real pressure to do something about this now. So that's what we're doing. Traditional production, as I mentioned, approximately 2 tons of CO2 per ton of steel. You probably know this already, but what we are doing is electrifying the production, large-scale hydrogen production based on renewable electricity into a DR reactor that produces DRI, into the electric arc furnace where we mix that DRI with scrap, and we have a fully continuous casting and rolling process. It will be Europe's largest electrolyzer to date, 700 to 800 megawatts of capacity and also storage. And we are looking at different technologies, alkaline, pressurized, PEM, and solid oxide, to optimize the total electrolyzer capacity. And I'm super excited to see that many other companies are also looking into the benefits of artificial intelligence across the production process. We're still a young company, but have already applied for 2 patents on the work that we're doing on hydrogen production and optimizing that flow. So why northern Sweden? And this is pretty much the key to it. We are a little bit farther away than our customer base, but we do have a significant advantage from a large amount of renewable electricity that is landlocked in the north of Sweden. It's also made up of almost 99% hydroelectric and wind power at an attractive cost as well. So this is, I'm not going to lie, a very, very nice competitive advantage to be in the north of Sweden. On the flip side, it does mean that we're slightly farther away from our customers, so logistics costs are higher, more expensive. It's not the only benefit, though. We picked this area for a large amount of land. It's a very sparsely populated area, so there's plenty of land. We got a fantastic plot that was industrially zoned for production of energy-intensive industry. There is a connection to the transmission grid at 400 kilovolt lines, so the power connection is a critical part of this also. Direct rail access to Malmbanan. Malmbanan is an iron ore railway that stretches from Narvik in the west in Norway to Luleå on the northeast coast of Sweden. The port of Luleå is undergoing a huge expansion project, going from its capacity today, both in terms of volumes of goods in and out, but also being able to receive up to Cape-sized ships into the port. And it is an area that has historically been very strong in this field, in metals and mining. LKAB is present there, SSAB. We have Luleå's Technical University that has a lot of world-leading expertise in this area. This is a video from July I wanted to share with you, that you see the groundworks up in Boden. Before we had taken the first spadeful of earth, I used to joke that we were just a PowerPoint company, but when I see these images, it's hard to take in sometimes. You just saw there the first piles being driven into the ground underneath where the DRI tower is going to be. So this is the future plant area up in Boden. One very important thing for us was always to have a partnership approach across the value chain. And that comes, first of all, from a community perspective. We are placing ourselves in the Boden municipality, where we have a very, very good and strong dialogue with the locals, the neighbors, politicians, schools, all of the infrastructure around. At peak for our first phase of operations, we are employing about 1,500 people, and they need to come from somewhere. Their kids need to go to school. They need to live in certain places. They need homes. They need entertainment. They need to go to restaurants, go to the cinema. So this was always a very important partnership for us. But then across the value chain and the production, this has also been something that is important. Many of our suppliers are also shareholders in the company. Many of our customers are shareholders in the company. And this is an interesting way to make sure that we have created alignment across the value chain. So this is the value chain. We have renewable electricity coming into electrolyzer capacity, as I mentioned, about 700 to 800 megawatts. Where ThyssenKrupp Nucera is one of our first selected technology partners, into Midrex 2.1 million ton DR reactor, where we're feeding in iron ore pellets, and then into a mini mill that is supplied by the SMS group. Our customers, several of which are on this slide here, they are not only important in creating the demand for the products, but we also get to bring back the scrap from that production and put it back into our process. So for us, it's also been important to have circularity in what we're doing. When we launched our project, 2 to 3 million tons of DRI steel had been announced in Europe. Hybrid partnership between LKAB, SSAB, and Vattenfall, and LKAB with their broader transformation. And we are extremely happy that this number has grown so much. As I mentioned in the beginning, our mission is to decarbonize this industry. So the more names and the bigger the volumes that are on this slide, the happier that we are. But it's incredible how much has changed in the past couple of years. So we're very happy to have fantastic names up on this slide alongside ours. I wanted to touch on a couple of themes as well, where we see that sustainability is not just about driving down the carbon dioxide emissions, or the emissions in general, or the energy usage in our production. We see that as the decarbonization aspect of it. But we really think that digitalization and technology in this industry has so much to give in reducing waste and improving production and efficiency. I was very impressed by the ArcelorMittal AI example. That's definitely something I'll be looking into as well. And it's something that we've invested in a lot already from the beginning, making sure that we have a very strong digital team that is building a technology stack based on best-of-breed software, where we build the integration layer, making sure that we're trying to always stay on our toes and not get any obsolete pieces of technology into our technology stack. So that's a very important aspect of it as well. And that's across our core processes, not just in the production process. The other aspect I want to talk about is equality and diversity. I'm always amazed when the few conferences that I've been to in the industry, I'm always amazed at people's introductions. They're often, they've been in this industry for 20 to 30 years. And I will probably never be in this industry for 20 to 30 years. I've been in this industry for 2.5 years. What's really interesting about what we're doing is that we are gathering a bunch of oddballs from all across the world, from a bunch of different industries, from academia, tech, finance, industry, consumer goods, and they're all joined in this mission to try to create something different. And it's sometimes harder to manage a diverse group of people with a lot of points of view and differing opinions. But it's also, I think, it's in the tension and in the friction that you get the best ideas. So just a couple of thoughts then on a few aspects of sustainability that are beyond just the decarbonization. So what's next? We started, as I mentioned, a few years ago. Actually, today, we announced the closing of 1.5 billion euros in equity financing, bringing the total funding with our debt to 5 billion euros. So next step is to actually build the plant. We've started, but not finished yet. A long way to go. And our aim is to reach full production of green steel in 2026, at which point we'll be producing 2.5 million tons, and then expanding to a second phase to full 5 million tons by 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luisa, for this inspiring presentation. And yeah, congratulations again on the funding round. So everyone in this room who has been through a funding round knows how hard and difficult it is. And to convince investors to give you $1.6 billion to build a new steel plant in a location where there's never been a steel plant, that's a very bold move. So really congratulations for this really big achievement.
Thank you.
So I'm opening the room up for some questions for Luisa. One from Ansgar.
Yeah, one question concerning your raw material for the steel. Have I understood it correctly that you are producing 100% of DRI in your electric arc furnace, or will there be scrap as well?
There will be scrap as well. So 3 million tons of DR pellets and approximately 1.5 million tons of scrap per year.
There's one on the left-hand side in the back.
Yeah. I also
but Frank already has the microphone, so
I'll give it to you later. Congratulations, especially on the investments as well, and Sebastian mentioned that already. And that's actually an interesting topic for me because you've managed to raise private capital, while on the list of steel companies that we've seen, there were lots of names of very well-known steel producers, etc. Most of them have been just waiting for subsidies to create their steel plants. So what was actually the key differentiator why you were able to actually raise capital rather than waiting for subsidies? What's your view on that?
I'll go back to this slide, and we also talked about, you made a comment earlier about where is the business case and where are you actually getting value from this. Our business in this location is a business that generates returns for our investors at a risk that they're willing to take. It's as simple as that. And this is, of course, a very important part of it. I think it becomes a little bit dangerous if we're only subsidizing initiatives like this. Where is the long-term resilience of those business cases? And what happens if there's overruns or production is just fundamentally more expensive? I think we need to talk a little bit about how we change the value chains of the steel industry in Europe. There aren't a lot of renewable electrons in the grid in continental Europe today. So is the best use of those electrons to build large-scale electrolyzers? Or are there other benefits or other areas of use? What is the alternative cost or alternative usage where you get a bigger return for those renewable electrons? So I think we need to question the value chain in total a little bit. But fundamentally, the reason why we are able to attract private capital is because we can generate returns to our investors.
I have a question. First of all, thanks, Luisa, for a very insightful presentation. Great to see that Sweden, as the other Scandinavian countries, are ahead of all the global changes. That's great. But my question is, you described a very green steelmaking process. Even though a part of scrap, which is fully recyclable product, understandable, you are using some DRI pellets, plus afterwards you will need some ferroalloys. And both are provoking kind of CO2 emissions. So the question is, how, if any, you are going to secure the green raw materials supply? And are you ready, because I heard some different thoughts yesterday, are you ready as a consumer of raw materials to buy pay extra premium for using green raw materials? Because this is quite an issue for steelmakers.
It's a very good question, very relevant question, considering we're calling ourselves H2 Green Steel. We have a lot to live up to. And in the end, what we're doing is there is a demand from our customers. And we've talked a lot, what is the definition of green steel? Would a 100% scrap-based coil be green steel? How much DRI content do you use? Does it count for all of the elements and the parts of the production? The requirement from our customers now is to significantly reduce the scope 1 and 2 emissions. And from that point of view, the 95% reduction is, until now, best in class. But very soon, once we've hit that target, that frontier, the next will be scope 3 emissions. And already today, even just asking the question to our raw material suppliers, I've asked them, what is the CO2 emission of your pellet? And they don't have an answer, which is understandable, but sometimes you need to ask the question. And I think that first we'll start with the scope 1 and 2 emissions, but then when we look at, and we've already looked at that, where are scope 3 emissions coming from? It is from the emissions from the iron ore production, it is on the burned lime, it is on shipping fuels. And so there is a bit of natural gas in our process still, so we will be looking at how to reduce those as well.
I think now Mr. Faber has
Thank
been.
you. A question in terms of, could you give us some background how you want to ramp up on operators, so headcounts? How does it look over the next years to the starting phase? And maybe some words of challenges. We know so polar circle region is not I mean, Sweden is big, 8 million, I think, roughly in population, but mainly, of course, when you split it in half, in the north there are maybe less than 1 million in people living. This is the question about.
Yep. No, it's a very good question. Actually, we have some partners that are going to help us with the construction management, and they first rated our region as dangerous as sub-Saharan civil war areas. And let me tell you, it is potentially close to the Arctic Circle, but it is not the North Pole. And in a 1 hour commute area from our site, there's about 80,000 people living there. So that's an important thing. So it is a thriving area. There are hospitals, schools, there are cinemas and restaurants as well. There's an international airport. You can fly direct to Paris if you want to. So that is one important factor. But the ramp up and the operators, that is a very important work stream that we've been working on since day one. We had the benefit of learning from some of the challenges that Northvolt had when they set up their plant in Skellefteå, which is actually an even smaller area. And so we've started with these things much earlier. One thing is to start to work with the educational system. So we are partnering with high schools to introduce vocational programs so that people can come straight from high school to work as operators. And then it depends on the type of work. So for some of our technical experts, we've had to bring in people from all over the world. So for the mini mill EAF steel making, we have a really strong team from North America. For our DRI production, we have a team from the Middle East. And so depending on the type of skill, we've had to go broader or narrower to find them. But it is absolutely a challenge that is very high on our agenda.
Maybe to complete it, what is then the number in 2025? To assume, is it 3,000 workers at the area?
1,500.
1,500.
Okay, here in the first row.
It's on? Yeah, okay. Luisa, at first, really amazing presentation. It's really nice to see that could be the future of steel making, right? I think that's...
Hope so.
Yeah, it's very exciting. For me, I think you mentioned two things that I'm really... I take that as good points. You first mentioned a strong team, the strong tech team, and oddballs, you also said. But you mentioned the best tech stack available. I think as you've seen now, AI for optimization, raw material purchasing, MHSummit. So I think that's the idea already. 2026, you're talking about the best tech stack available. Is it already in your mind to do something in-house or more to go to the market? I think probably go ahead a little bit in the time, but 3 years is a little bit too little when you think about construction and everything. So what is your opinion on that?
There will be very little that we develop end-to-end ourselves. So we believe in finding the best software providers for the specific use case. But then the important thing is to make sure that we have that integrated in an efficient way, that we have common nomenclature across all of our data sets, and that we are speaking about the same data when we're talking about it. And then we can do what we want. I mean, we are making sure that we can extract data points from every single sensor across the production process. And that's one of the benefits of designing this plant greenfield. We can design it with a clean sheet from scratch. That's sometimes a difficulty, because if it's a blank sheet, where do you draw the first line? But that's our approach, is to do the integrations and not go deep into any particular area. Unless if it's something where we see that there is nothing and that would generate a significant competitive advantage.
Okay, there's one more.
One quick question about your electrolyzer. what are you gonna electrolyze? Water?
Yes,
Salty water, or you had to purify it before you...
it's relatively clean water, not salty.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, one more question. As the winner of the Scrap Award from Metals Hub, I know scrap is beautiful and everybody loves scrap. The question is 1.5 million tons you have to bring up to the Arctic Circle, more or less. How do you want to arrange it? So the Swedish market is not so big as scrap market on volume-wise.
I'm buying. I'm in the market to buy scrap, so if you have scrap, I'm happy to take it. No, I mean,
Of course.
So, I mean, it's a good question. Physically, how we're going to bring scrap, rail or ship to the port of Luleå, where it's going to come from. So we are working with our customers to secure return scrap back from several of our important customer flows. So that would be prime scrap, where we know the use. All of the scrap in our production, of course, will go back into the production. But then we are looking at the most efficient transportation for the remaining scrap. Europe is a net exporter of scrap, not all of it relevant for our production, but we do have some flexibility because we can flex our DRI. So with the 1.5 million tons, I say that's a rough number because it could be lower if we add more DRI or higher if we add more scrap.
We have time for maybe one last question.
Thank you. Just my question is in line with the previous question. In the maybe middle term, long term, what I hear is there is not enough scrap, there is not enough blast furnace pellets, or in this case for electric arc furnace, but high quality pellets. Do you, for the next, not tomorrow, but in 5-10 years, do you see also new kind of raw material like lumpy iron ore, reprocessing fines in some way? So there is a scenario there, or still on 100% on scrap and high quality pellets at the moment?
We're looking at lump ore as well. So our DRI team has used lump ore successfully in the Middle East instead of DR pellets. So we're looking at that as well. We're pretty open to what we're putting in. Our focus will be DRI, since that is what we have the tower for. But there is an openness to make sure that we are getting the best value and use in our production.
Okay. By coincidence, we produce lumpy iron ore.
I'll buy it too.
High grade, 65.
Yeah. Thank you very much to the audience. I think those were some very good and some relevant questions. And thank you for you, Luisa, coming from the cold Sweden to the warm Germany.
Thank you so
much. And we have a little small present for you, The World for Sale, a worthwhile read maybe on the plane ride back.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.